Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally-Anne Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally-Anne here. I'm really excited today. We've got our first guest on the Eating For You podcast. I'm here with Angela Mills.
Hello, Sally-Anne, and hello, everyone.
Yeah, it's lovely to be catching up with Angela. Angela is a personal trainer, but she's much more than that. Let me explain. She's been operating her business Fit and Fabulous in the Blue Mountains for around 13 years. But at the beginning of 2020, she started going online. So I'm very excited to learn a little bit more today about what's happening with the online business. Angela is highly critical of the one-size-fits-all approach that the fitness industry tends to promote. One of Angela's greatest passions is tailoring fitness to people where they're at, empowering women and helping them to find joy in simply moving. You will hear Angela correct me in our conversations because I often use the word exercise. That's a no-no. Anyway, as well as being a Pilates instructor, personal trainer, functional fitness and Zumba instructor, Angela is certified nutrition coach, third age menopause coach, pre and postnatal coach, and advanced oncology fitness specialist. So Angela is going to be our resident fitness expert. So I'm very excited to getting this underway with Angela today. But Angela, if you could let us know how you ended up working in fitness.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm what you would call an accidental fitness trainer. My first career was in corporate marketing, and it was only when we moved to the Blue Mountains about 18 years ago with my husband and I that I got into fitness. And I actually did the fitness training certification more for myself than to teach, because earlier in my youth, I felt myself as being very injury prone. I was one of those people that would go really hard with fitness and I'd be all excited and I'd be, sort of getting there with my goals, and then I'd be injured and then I'd find myself back on the couch. And with that, it was almost like this downward spiral. Once you can't move, you end up eating more, you're becoming more depressed. And then I'd get this new wave of, excitement and motivation, and I'd get fit again, and then I'd get injured. And when we moved to the Blue Mountains, I had a bit more time on my hands, and that's why I thought, look, I'm just going to try and get to the bottom of why I keep hurting myself. And that's what led me to do the certification. The word did get out in the neighbourhood. It sort of came out that I was a fitness trainer, and next thing you know, I've got a group of ladies, all my neighbours, saying, "Oh, look, you should be doing some classes for us here." And that's how I reluctantly started teaching. Being quite shy at the time, and that just grew and grew, and it just got to the point where over the last 13 years, I've probably trained thousands of people, in different types of group fitness classes as well as one-on-one, and now with online classes as well that I do, elsewhere as well. So it's just one of those things where and I love, and I had a passion for it as well, I think. So that's why I'd be always constantly learning more, or I'd have a client coming in who may have had pelvic floor issues, and therefore I'd go off and do a training course, and before you know it, I've done so many training courses to really try and address everyone's, I guess, different sort of needs in that respect.
Yes, no, it's quite a list of accomplishments to get through in terms of looking at how broadly and how deeply at the same time that you have gone with the fitness.
And it's one of those things, I think, as a woman, when you are in your mid-30s, life's pretty dandy to an extent. And it's only once you start to get towards perimenopause and beyond that suddenly, a lot of our, movement and health issues really come to the surface. So it's an amazing area to work in. And having been through most of it myself, I'm definitely a self-professed expert on the subject.
Likewise myself, with a lot of the food stuff, Eating For You came out of my own experience with eating. And obviously I was already trained as a dietitian, but just realised, like what we're going to talk about with exercise today, just because I knew what to eat didn't mean that I was actually always eating in a way that actually nourished me.
Right.
And ladies do the same. So let's talk about that today, because so many of my ladies in my community, Angela, have been saying, it's just been such a long winter and I'm really struggling to get back in to exercise. So we'd love to hear from you today what you would suggest to help us venturing outside again with courage rather than fear.
Yes, there's definitely something to be said for that. Look, it really does feel like it's a bit of a new season in many respects, doesn't it? You know, at this, I guess, do we call it post-COVID? It's almost transitional COVID period. And getting out and moving is one of those things that I think you almost want to do when, as you see the weather warming up as well, you know, here in Australia in the Southern Hemisphere. And one of the easiest and I guess the best ways to get into it is to really start looking at incidental movement rather than structured exercise from my perspective. And that's really just looking at opportunities to just move more on a day-to-day basis. I know with a lot of my clients, there'll be people that are stuck behind a desk for much of the day because of the nature of their work. And we'll look at, well, how can we incorporate movement into what is an 8-hour block where you're stuck there? And, you know, even little things like when you talk to people on the phone, make sure you're standing up, you know, so as soon as the phone rings and you pick up the phone, you stand up at the same time and you do some pacing around, you do some gentle stretches. Just get some lubrication in those joints, you know, which is what will help with alleviating stiffness in the body over time. You know, looking at if you're going out shopping, parking a little bit further away rather than closer so that you do have those extra few minutes of movement. And if you're carrying shopping back to the car, that's strength training, isn't it? In its most basic form, yes.
I know. It's funny you say that. I often amaze myself with what I can lift. You know, people in shops will say, "No, Sally-Anne, don't lift that up." And I said, "Oh no, I know this is less than a bag of chaff or a bag of feed for my horse. I know I can lift this, you know." And it's just, as you said, through that incidental activity that is part of your routine.
Absolutely. And you know, I think we've all had the thing where we're walking back to the car with one too many bags and thinking, oh, why did I park so far away? But hey, that sense of accomplishment, that extra few minutes of just carrying it, you know, does you more good than you know, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time when you're doing it.
Yes. And especially I think if you can, you know, put some walking either end of, you know, taking public transport, you know, if that fits into your day, whether it's travelling for work or whether it's travelling to do some shopping. I know that had worked in the past for me really well, you know, without even thinking about it. I could do an hour's walking in a day at either end of my workday.
And, you know, there's a lot of evidence saying now that if you were to if you looked at two different personality, you know, people types, one is a person who has a lot more incidental movement in every day, but they don't do structured exercise. And then another person who's sedentary all week and then they go on the weekend and they really hit the gym really hard, you know, and try and do 1 or 2 hours of really, you know, makeup type exercise. The ones who are going to be better off in the long run are the people that have got the incidental movement in there every day. You know,
that's good.
That does your body significantly much, you know, it's much better for your body than trying to cram exercise into, you know, 1 hour or 1 or 2 1-hour sessions a week.
Yeah, I was pointing at myself when Angela was talking about the person that doesn't really do structured exercise, thinking, oh, that's me.
Well, I mean, I have to say, you know, people say you're a fitness trainer, you must be out there, you know, pumping iron. And it's like, no, but I'm on my feet most of the day. You know, I have a client, I'll show them 1 or 2 repetitions of an exercise and then I let them do it. And in the meantime, that's my exercise, those 1 or 2. But I do them 8 times a day, you know, if I'm training people. So you know, it adds up over time, just those little movements.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good reminder, Angela, that we often think a little bit like healthy eating, exercise is all or nothing.
Absolutely.
But there's many shades of grey and from what I gather, the greyer it is, the better, because that's what we sustain.
Absolutely. And I think also as we get to, or as we approach midlife, it's significantly more important because, you know, our bodies start to change at this point. You know, the hormonal changes in our body really play havoc with, most women. And it's so tempting to try and to think, okay, well, I must exercise harder, I must eat less, I must be more hardcore with my dieting and everything. And your body's just not going to respond to it. It just doesn't work like that when you get to midlife. So that whole, you know, more incidental approach to everything is really what's going to set you up for a much healthier lifestyle in the long term.
That's great advice. For anyone who might like to, you know, get back out walking or perhaps, you know, look at either an online class or a local class, how would you suggest people start easing back into that, you know, if it's even just for the 5 or 6 months of winter, it feels like winter's been that long, or even longer if we haven't been doing anything as structured as that. What would you suggest?
What I would suggest is having a plan, but I'm not talking about a strict, it's not a very structured plan, but really looking at ways that you can actually even put 15 minutes of exercise, so a movement exercise into your day. And it could be that one day it's a 15-minute walk. The next day it might be just a 15-minute Pilates or a yoga session at home, which you could be doing with there's so many short online classes these days. And I find even with my own membership, it's the short classes which are the most popular. So even doing something like that, or putting YouTube on and following a dance fitness video without hitting any furniture. But just trying to do something every day and making it different, because that's what's going to keep it interesting. And your body's going to love that as well, because it's the diversity of movement that really ticks all the different boxes. You get your heart rate up, you get to stretch, you get to add more mobility to your different joints, so you're not going to stiffen up as much. And you're going to release stress, which is one of the main culprits for a lot of our health woes as we get older as well, in terms of our hormonal imbalances as well. Just try to keep those stress levels under wrap. And that's where having that movement is really, really important as well.
And I think what you were saying before about your own experience with exercise, I could relate to that a little bit myself when I was much younger. And, you would just go hard and burn out was my, my sort of scenario. And again, I think it's worth us just talking a little bit about that concept of all or nothing exercise when we're getting back into it, because the last thing we want is to get an injury.
Absolutely, and probably one thing I would suggest I say it to everyone, I'll say it to your audience as well, is that we often pick up niggles over time, and it could be because of the way we've moved when we've done exercise. It could be because of the way we sit in a chair over time. Yes, you should have seen us, folks. Both of us just sat up a little bit taller when I said that. But it's these little things over time that can turn into long-term injuries as well. And they're the things that will actually come back to bite us when we, or they can do when we start to take movement a lot more seriously. And if you do have a pre-existing condition like that, go and see someone. Go and see a physiotherapist or someone who's an expert, because it's just fixing these little things puts you in such a better place to be able to progress and to move forward. And look, another area too where this is very relevant is ladies that have pelvic floor issues, because that is so common as we get to this point in life, especially ladies that have had babies earlier in life. That as our hormones change, it suddenly becomes, something you thought wasn't an issue suddenly can become an issue. And that can really stop women wanting to move and get out there. But there's so much that you can do. Pelvic floor physiotherapists these days are so well, equipped with ways of actually helping us to get over things like that, so that you can live a fuller life. And that has benefits in every respect of life, not just in your, your 15 minutes of movement every day.
No, and I think that's really good advice, because we need to have those foundations right.
Yes,
our body has to be working well. We shouldn't be thinking that we can just push through it. And sometimes it's true. A niggle can be helped with exercise, but sometimes it isn't helped by exercise. So it's better to get an expert to have a look at what's happening, whether it's your knee, your ankle, your shoulder, your back, and that you get some exercises to actually get that part of your body working well, and then you can go on and do your walking or your dancing or whatever you want to do.
And I find with many ladies that come in, they'll say that they have knee issues or things like that, and often it's just that they're not doing certain moves correctly.
Yes.
How they bend down to pick up things. They're not shifting their body weight in the right position, and it's sometimes it's just not instinctive. You have to see a fitness trainer or an expert of some sort to really show you some of these tweaks, so that you're setting yourself up to succeed.
Yeah. And I think it's true that at different times of our life, some of those old injuries can catch up with us as well. A friend of mine who's a physiotherapist used to always say, "Oh well, we don't bounce so well once we turn 30. And I'll just explain, I'll give you some context, ladies. I don't bounce my body around, but I used to have a few, horse riding falls when I was younger. And of course, you literally do bounce when you hit the ground, when that happens. So, Yeah, so they do sneak up on you. And, I often talk to my ladies, sometimes in the morning we wake up and we think, how are we feeling today? And it's like, oh, yes, I'm a bit stiff. And how do I get out of bed? And that sort of thing. And that's just all of a sign that, as you say, that, that our joints and that need lubrication. We need to keep moving and keep it all flowing.
Well, it's very true. Even within our joints, say, for instance, in our hip joint, synovial fluid is made in that joint in direct response to movement. If we don't move, our body does not create synovial fluid. And the thing is, this is what makes our joints glide. So, and if you only move in a certain type of way, then there will be parts of that joint that are not lubricated. And therefore, no matter how you can, how much you stretch, you're never going to get that mobility in there unless you're incorporating that type of movement, the right type of movement, but also enough movement in your days to stop you stiffening up. Yeah.
And that's where I think, going back to right where we started really talking about that incidental activity, that if we're mindful with our movement, and like you said, if we do have, some parts of our body, our knees or our ankles that need to, have some attention, then I know myself, Angela, if it's gardening or even housework sometimes, it's like, well, it's kind of like what I call my garden yoga or my housework yoga, because we're doing lunges, we're doing squats, we're perhaps gently reaching for things. So we're going to get a little bit more wider movement, range of motion than just thinking, oh, I need to swim or I need to walk.
That's right, yes. And that's where being an active person means that you have that body awareness. So when you do get yourself into, positions like you're reaching for that top shelf or you're crawling down to get something out of the corner cabinet, the one that's always really hard to get to, how you lunge down and, how you set yourself up to get that, is quite important. And your body will respond differently to it if you're an active person versus someone who never moves.
Which is just, brought to mind, that when we think about movement, too often we think about that end goal, what we might have for it. For some ladies it might be, you're wanting to move more to get your blood sugar levels down if you've got diabetes, or you want to get some muscle strength because you've got osteoporosis and you want to protect your bones as much as possible. And then for many ladies that I work with, and I know, Angela, you're the same, it's about body weight. But too often we think about those end goals, and I was just visualizing how important from a functional point of view it is, and ladies talk to me about this as they age, that they can't bend over and do up their shoelaces. If they drop something, they can't get down onto the ground and pick it up, because it could be due to arthritis, it could be just due to not having enough strength.
Absolutely,
so there's that, as you were sort of talking about sneaking out and picking that thing up from the corner, I'm thinking, we want to keep moving just so we can function.
And I guess the other scary thing is it's only in midlife that you start to get a sense of what your future could look like when you don't have that sort of, agility and that mobility to do certain things. And it just creeps up on us. No one wakes up at the age of 80 and finds that they're stiff. It's one of these things that starts from about 40. And it's quite scary. Like all the, osteoporosis starts in perimenopause. All these older age conditions start, at that point in time. So we really need to, be aware and also be, very conscious of the fact that we do need to look after ourselves.
Yes.
It's about self-preservation as much as anything, isn't it?
Yeah. And like I said, that sense of, being able to function, because this is what I notice with older women in my family. That's what goes, that ability to actually get down on the floor and play with the grandkids, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
Or get down on the floor and do the yoga stretches that they used to like to do on the floor, but they're not confident getting off the floor anymore. And what I like about your approach, Angela, is that it's not all or nothing. It's that let's build it in to our day, so it's part of our day, rather than, I have to go and exercise now, because that can be like, no thanks.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, very few people, are on this planet for the sole purpose of exercising. It's like, it's a task we do. It's like brushing our teeth. It's something you have to do. It's all part of of body maintenance.
Yeah.
And the thing with movement or exercise is that we don't see the results as quickly as we do from many other things, you know, and the same with diet. You know, as we get older, we come out of that mindset of immediate gratification. We realise that what we're doing is for our own good for the long term.
That's right.
You know, and the weight will come off with time, and we will actually be able to move better than most people around us as we get older.
And look, and I think if we can take, you know, especially, you know, getting feedback from ladies that I work with, the whole mindful eating approach, is that we don't focus on weight loss in the Eating For You approach. It's all about changing habits, and you're the same with changing exercise habits. Ours is all about eating habits. And ladies will say to me, you know, I don't think about my weight, but it does. It just naturally comes off. You know, if you're changing the way you eat or changing the way you move and doing it consistently, then you get not only the functional benefits, but you get other health results as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
Angela, thanks for sharing all of that. We're going to be talking to Angela again during the podcast. As I said, Angela will be is our resident fitness expert. But where can ladies find out more about Fit and Fabulous and what you offer?
Well, I'm on Facebook and on Instagram. And I also have my own website, which is a Fit and Fabulous online membership, and that is at fitandfabulousonline.com. And I should mention also that we do have a 14-day free trial. So if people want to come in and just join in, try some of the workouts as well. A lot of them are very beginner friendly, and we do have some of the osteoporosis in there as well. There's no obligation; they can cancel at any time.
Yeah, that's a fabulous offer. And there you go, Fit and Fabulous. You are fabulous, aren't you?
Thank you.
Of course it's a fabulous offer.
That's a great way to finish.
Anyway, I look forward to having many more conversations with Angela, and I will be providing the links to her social media and her online program.
Well, thank you very much for having me on board, Sally-Ann.
It's my pleasure. I look forward to it. You have been listening to the Eating For You podcast with Sally-Ann Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.